Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Liam Jenkins and welcome to another video here at Philly Sports Network. Now I know what you're thinking. It's a Saturday, it's cold, it's rainy, and I've got about as much reason to believe in the Philadelphia Eagles as I do that I will find my future wife on Tinder. But I'm here to try and cast some of those doubts aside, because although optimism may be at an all-time low, and although it may be a bit disappointing and dismal after a loss to the Dolphins, some good alliteration, the NFC East is somehow still very winnable because the Dallas Cowboys are awful, for lack of a better term. So what I decided to do was head over to ESPN's NFL Playoff Machine, which is... it's not a machine, it's a web page, so that's a lie. It basically allows you to go through every matchup between now and the end of the 2019 season to see how the playoff picture is going to look, which teams are going to be involved, which teams aren't, so on and so forth. And given how open the NFC East is, I think we can have some fun with this. So we're going to start out by being as logical as we can, okay? So I know a lot of people are interested in Washington now because there's a remote possibility that they can somehow win the division, which is terrifying given that they're currently 3-9. That's not good, is it? But for the sake of logic, alright, they're not beating the Green Bay Packers yet. We'll get to that scenario a bit later. So Green Bay win that matchup. The Eagles beat the Giants in Monday Night Football. Let's be logical, alright? The team are upset, the coaches are upset. This has been the hardest they've been punched in the mouth all season long. They have to get up or the season's over. And there's no real better team to come up against because you've got that as a quarterback playing against you. Eagles win that, meaning they will move to 6-7. They'll be tied with Dallas for the top of the division. But there are other matchups to keep a note of, involving San Francisco, Seattle, New Orleans. All of these teams could be shuffled around. You can go from a 1 seed to a 5 seed very, very quickly in the NFC, as we'll soon learn. So San Francisco v the Saints. I think the Niners almost beat the Ravens. They'll be a bit seething from that. They know they've got to do some work here. Given in mind, if you look at their division, they're currently tied with the Seahawks. They've got to gain some ground. The Seahawks are facing the Rams, so that's a win for Seattle. So we kind of have to say, look, New Orleans have stormed their division. There's no way Tampa Bay are coming back or even getting remotely close to a wildcard spot. We can afford a letdown spot. I think this is where it would come. So I would take Niners on the road, at least a cover. That pushes Green Bay into the 2 seed, but only because they beat Washington. All right, no other reason. Out of that, I think Kirk Cousins should take care of Detroit. That shouldn't be too hard to see. I'm only going to be doing NFC matches, by the way, just for the sake of simplicity. Carolina and Atlanta, we'll go with Carolina. And I think outside of Arizona losing to the Steelers, that just about does it. So after 1 week, that's how things look. As you can see, 2 teams tied, Washington out of the mix. Week 15. Eagles, Redskins. If the Redskins lose that first game and they don't beat the Packers with a massive upset, which could totally blow up the NFL, right? They would be in a tragic spot. That's a soul-crushing loss. The Eagles would come away with a win there. The Cowboys v the Rams, that's tricky because, I mean, at this point, the Rams 7-5, they can technically still sneak in to a 5th seed, but they need to win out. So they've got a bit more to play for. Dallas can be a bit more lenient, so it's a coin flip, but I'm honestly going to say that the Rams win that game. I genuinely think they could overthrow Dallas. Dallas has shown me no signs of life as of late. They're on a 3-game losing streak for the 2nd time this season. They look awful against the Bears, and if Mitch Trubisky can do that, then I'm sure that McVay could draw up something that isn't a screen pass to break this defense. Cardinals, I think, will lose to the Browns. I think the Falcons should lose to the Niners. The Saints should beat the Colts. The Giants and Dolphins, let's give it Miami. Screw it, it'll be fine. Green Bay and the Bears will go with the Packers. Seattle should beat Carolina. Minnesota should beat the Chargers. And after another week of relevant games, this is how things look. The Eagles now have 1-game lead going into that Week 16 matchup. Seattle and San Francisco tied at the top of their division. Green Bay and Minnesota 1 game apart. It's gonna get spicy in these last 2 games. All right, so Week 16. Washington, New York doesn't really matter at this point. We'll give it to Washington. The Saints should beat the Titans. The Chiefs should beat the Bears. Green Bay and Minnesota. At Minnesota, I'm going to go with Minnesota. Because the thing is, Green Bay have control of that division at that point. So Minnesota have a bit more to play for. There's a bit more of an edge. And if Dalvin Cook's healthy, they should be able to at least keep that offense off the field. They'll both be tied at 11-4, but hey, it's probably more entertaining than the NFC East. Jets and Steelers, we'll go with the Steelers. Colts and Panthers, Frank Reich, I salute you. Falcons and Jags, we'll go with Nick Foles. But this one here, Rams Niners. Now, bear in mind, okay, at this point, the Rams are going to be out of it. So, we're going to have to go with the Niners. Like, there's no other way you can avoid that. The Niners are going to win that matchup. If we look at Seattle, they face the Cardinals. That's a win. So, that stays the same. They're still tied at the division, which means as we go into week 17, things get a bit messy, don't they? You've got Eagles, Giants. We'll say the Eagles win that for the sake of simplicity. But Dallas and Washington. Eagles currently in this situation with a 1-game lead over the division at home. Dallas is breaking apart. Are they going to play spoiler? In this situation, the Eagles have built up steam and trended upwards. Dallas have gone downwards. There'll be the desperation angle. But I'd like to think that with the possibility of Jordan Howard being back by this game, with a rare possibility that Deshaun Jackson could be at least training again, you'd like to think the resurgence in Philadelphia would be real. We'll give it to the Eagles. And when we get to week 17, a win against the Giants is almost a certain. The Cowboys are out of it by that point. But this is where things get interesting. Because whoever wins out of that Seattle and San Francisco game, if we say San Fran wins it, Seattle travel to Philadelphia as a 5th seed. They're 13-3 and they'll be a 5th seed. Right? That's awful. If Seattle win, it's San Francisco that travel to Philadelphia. So who they face is out of their control. It's going to be one of those two teams. New Orleans should beat the Panthers. Green Bay should beat the Detroit Lions. Minnesota should beat Chicago. That puts them to a 6th seed. And just like that, the Eagles go 9-7. They're 2 games clear of the Cowboys. They take care of business. But who would you rather face in that instance? San Fran or Seattle? I mean, given that the Eagles have done nothing against Russell Wilson in forever, I would verge with saying the San Francisco team would be the better matchup. It's the more advantageous San Francisco traveling to a cold, windy, hostile, likely rainy, sold-out Lincoln Financial Field with an underdog Eagles team that may have Deshaun Jackson back, that should be able to run the ball with Jordan Howard. That's, in my mind, call me crazy, a more winnable game than a team that the Eagles just haven't been able to get past in 3 or 4 years now. Regardless of whether it's Carson Wentz or before that, they haven't been able to get past Russell Wilson, and I don't see that changing. There's too much of a mental aspect, especially after my guy KJ Wright's comments about the Seahawks knowing what's coming offensively, play-wise. I think they've got their number. It will be much better for me at least to see a 5th seed San Francisco in Philadelphia. It gives them a chance of winning. That's how I see it in Route 1 at least. Now let's reset and let's have the more fun one. So Washington are going to beat Green Bay. The Eagles are going to lose to the Giants because the team's breaking down at this point. Dallas have already lost though. So I mean the division somehow still in reach here. Somehow still in reach. The Niners will beat the Saints and we'll go with the Seahawks. These are the only teams that really matter at this point to the Eagles. The Seahawks will beat the Rams. Week 15. Week 15, okay, is where things get fun. You've got Eagles, Redskins. If the Redskins beat a demoralized Eagles, okay, and the Cowboys then somehow find a way to lose to the Rams, who could be technically fighting for a division, who are just doing everything they can to stay relevant at this point. Seattle maybe drop a game to Carolina? No, just for the fun of it. Chicago can beat Green Bay. Let's make that fun. Let's throw that wild card in there. And Minnesota drop to a 3rd seed because of it. Talking of Minnesota, what if the Chargers beat them? Oh, and now Minnesota goes to a 6th seed. Now, bear in mind, the thing is with the Chargers, yes, they're only on 4 wins. Yes, they're 4 wins back off the Chiefs. But again, we've seen stranger things happen, all right? They're not quite out of it to an extent. I mean, it's not quite Washington, but you never know. Now, if we go to week 16, Washington beat the Giants. The Eagles beat the Cowboys. Seahawks win. We'll say Minnesota beats Green Bay. That switches those guys back around again. The Niners beat the Rams, obviously, so they now go to 12-2 with the Seahawks at 12-3. The NFC East will go to 3 teams at 6-9 going into week 17. Now, if Minnesota drop to Detroit in week 14, so this week, you've then also got a tie at the top of the NFC North. This is the most insane thing possible, okay? You've got Green Bay and Minnesota, both 9-6. San Francisco and Seattle. If San Francisco lose to the Falcons, they'd be tied at the top of their division with Seattle. Green Bay and Minnesota would be tied. The Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Redskins would all be tied in week 17. It's crazy, right? So basically, whoever wins that game out of Seattle and San Francisco, we know the drill. They go to the 5th seed, they switch around, so it's a coin flip at this point. But if the Cowboys lose to the Redskins get the 4 seed unless the Eagles win. So even if the Eagles, in this astonishing scenario where they'd have choked to the Giants, they'd have lost to the Redskins, they'd have beat the Cowboys, if they can come out and beat the Giants in week 17, they sneak into that 4th seed spot. So that's mesmerizing in itself. If we then look at what happens with Minnesota, it gets fun. So if Minnesota loses and Green Bay wins, Chicago sneak into the playoffs. But if Chicago loses to Minnesota, you can see where I'm going with this, alright? Basically, the Eagles have to do a lot more messing up than people realize to not get in the playoffs. It takes a monumental run from the Redskins. It takes a steep 2-game decline further, which if the Eagles drop another 2 games, this offseason is going to be terrifying, okay? And then the Cowboys to just not be the Cowboys, which isn't possible. But if we go back one more scenario, all right, week 14, let's say the Eagles beat the Giants. Obviously, we know the Cowboys have lost. If the Eagles then lose against the Redskins, forget the other Redskins game for now, then the Cowboys win against the Rams, what we then see is yet another situation where the Eagles can tie it. So if the Eagles beat the Cowboys, they're then 7-8 tied again. So when you go into week 17, the winner of the division will either be the Dallas Cowboys via the Washington Redskins or the New York Giants via the Philadelphia Eagles. So if the Eagles win and the Cowboys win, the Cowboys get it based on head-to-head record because of what we saw with the Redskins earlier on. But if the Redskins win, the Eagles get it. If they both lose, Dallas gets it. So, again, it's a 50-50 thing. The Eagles still have some way to go to not make the playoffs. Know what you think, guys? What's the most likely route to the playoffs? Can the Eagles still do it? I want to hear your opinions down in the comment section below. From myself, Liam Jenkins, I'll see you next time here at Philly Sports Network.